Welcome to Talk HR UK with me, Simon Geere, from the HR Recruitment team at Alexander Lloyd. Unbelievably, this is episode 16 of our second season, and I was fortunate to grab some valuable time with Bertie Tonks. Now, Bertie is the number one most influential HR practitioner in 2023, according to HR Magazine, and also the Chief People Officer for Collinson, a global leader in travel loyalty, experience, insurance solutions and customer engagement. Our conversation today is a mini journey through HR as we know it, and we titled it HR the Reinvention, Shaking Up the Profession. In this conversation, Bertie covers the reinvention of the HR operating model, strategic people planning, leadership capability and much more. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed making it, and I'll see you at the end. Hi Bertie, thanks a lot for joining us today. It's great to have you here, and I know you are a busy gentleman, so thank you so much for making a bit of space to talk through 4 key exciting areas of HR that you and I have been talking about recently, and I know are things you're very passionate about.
Lovely, Simon. Brilliant. Really looking forward to this, actually. So, look forward to the conversation, see where we go.
Great stuff. So we titled this as a sort of HR the Reinvention, shaking up the profession, if you like. And I'm going to go straight in with the first point, which was all about reinventing the HR operating model. So I just wanted to hear your views on where you think HR operating models are now and where they need to be and why.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Simon. And you know, some of your listeners may have attended some of the conferences that I've been speaking at recently, so there'll be a little bit of overlap. But I am hoping that if they have attended anything, there'll be something new here and a little bit fresh for thinking. So, right. Hey, look, poking a stick at our profession in a healthy way so that we can progress is definitely a conversation I want to be involved in. Look, I think that there's so many expectations, Simon, of the HR profession. When you look at when you start to talk to our business leaders, they think we come with a fully complete skill set around anything ranging from talent management, organization development, organization transformation, because apparently we're the experts in that. Whether it's coaching, reward, let's be honest, the full spectrum of our profession is quite significant, and yet there's a general expectation that all of those skills and deep level of capabilities lie within any one individuals within our team. Of course, you and I, as more seasoned professionals, will absolutely know that's not the case. I think the other thing just to say is that in business, there's nothing truer than all roads lead back to 2 things, talent and cash. Well, can't do too much about the cash other than the fact that we know we get the people element right and the cash will start to roll, generally speaking, as long as the economic climate kind of prevails. So I absolutely love our profession. I think there's some incredible people that work within it. And globally, I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of them. But it's time for change. I do think very, very passionately. I feel passionately we should always be evolving. But it does feel like a real turning point right now that there is so much academic research out there. So much has been said about the world of work and culture and leadership and HR. We've got to start listening. I'm a great believer that if we're going to change the way that we operate, Simon, I think there needs to be a much healthier, intentful kind of convergence of the academic world, right, and what's coming out of all the research, great research that seems to come out of that space, out of practitioners, people like me that are in business, and also consultants. And what I never see is the coming together of those three worlds in order to better the world of work. So I appreciate your question is around the target operating model, but I do think that there's something of real power to be unleashed if we could bring together those 3 elements in a much healthier, more active way than we see today.
It's an interesting view, I suppose. I mean, from picking the academics initially, where are you driving with that? Is it just that you think, you know, we're looking for more clout intellectually? What are your thoughts?
I think we're looking for more robust thinking, in a way that academics would tend to drive through, which is fact-based, research-based, pulling on multiple strands to draw upon conclusions. whether they're biased or not, there's no getting away from that because we're humans after all. But drawing on the past, the best frameworks, practices, thinking, principles, the fact that academics would tend to adopt a multifaceted approach to drawing some of their conclusions. I think all of that's really, really quite powerful. And it definitely does pull together thinking and potential for application in a way that when you're a practitioner, you're not afforded the time or opportunity to be able to do. Of course, the piece around consultants for me is that they're in and out of lots of different types of organizations, size, sectors, scale. And I think that they too bring with them an interesting perspective. So certainly something as I go into next year, I'm going to be focusing a lot more on as I start to bring teams together to help us overcome some of our traditional problems.
That's interesting. And a number of people have mentioned the very project-based nature of HR and people over the last 12 to 18 months, and that could be an angle. And I guess that indeed brings us back to the question, sort of does hit on how we look at how we deliver what we do in HR. I mean, what are your thoughts around operating models currently? Where do you think we need to be making adjustments where possible?
I think the Ulrich model has been absolutely fantastic. It's been really, really useful to us as a profession. I know he's continued to evolve his thinking around that, but I think we just need some more breakthrough thinking. I follow a close friend of mine doing a lot of work, Perry Timms, around the reinvention of the HR operating model. And why I sing quite passionately about his work and others like him is just because they're thinking about what's next. Where do we go next? At the moment, we're too siloed. You mentioned siloed yourself, but I think in terms of the operating model for HR, we're too siloed as it stands, and we're not making the difference that we really need to. Our business leaders are expecting more and more of us almost on a day-to-day basis. So we have to rethink, reimagine how we're going to drive value. And it's also not helping people in the profession, by the way, either. When I look at my team, I've got people like business partners or reward experts or comms and engagements experts. Because we're designed as a silo, what they're not doing is gaining broader experience that gives them deeper understanding of our organization problems, challenges, and effectively how we're going to solve for those. So I see the operating model of the future being one where HR as a specialism actually is much more transient, we see much more rotation across different specialisms within a particular team. And I'm not talking every 2 years. I don't think I don't think we even warrant that. I think even kind of on a 6-monthly basis. Historically, most of the organizations, Simon, that I've worked in, you'll get a business partner, for example, that will be married up to a particular area or manager or business unit, and they'll be there for 2-3 years, or until they leave or the leader leaves. And I think that too is unhelpful, because what it doesn't do is create more of a feeling of constant change or evolution within the business partner's mindset, and actually moving them on from one business area where they're probably quite settled, have very, very healthy, quality, good relationships, to another. In itself, that unsettling motion can create a new level of capability as they start to have to think again about how they re-establish meaningful relationships, how they rethink their perspectives on how they drive value through the business area, all of those kinds of things, really. So I think the way that we deliver the operating model in the future for HR is going to be more transient activity of HR professionals through different specialisms. But I also think it's going to mean the abolition of what we call the talent life cycle.
Okay.
So things such as onboarding, talent acquisition, integration, performance management, or engagement, as we call it at Collinson, reward, careers. The big challenge with all of that as a life cycle, as we continue to look at it, is as we step into the door to look at the problems, challenges, and opportunities of each of those, we straight away are biased to the traditional lens that we've always adopted. So we're looking at, instead of looking at our problems from a different place, we're relying on habit and and the best practice, which many will know, I hate that term. It makes the hairs on my neck stand up. But the best practice, it relies on the tools, principles, and practices that we've relied on for far too long. Well, the world of work hasn't really evolved, and we keep going back to COVID. It's a shame, really. It's a shame that we look at that one point in time as being so instrumental. Why couldn't we have driven such huge changes prior to that? Well, in part, I think it's our own profession. I think we probably, and again, I love our profession, but I think we've perhaps stood in our own way of delivering something that's much more significant.
It's very interesting. I mean, so HR people, there is a propensity for people to stay in lane, in my observations over the years. You get specialists, generalists, and I have to admit, my understanding of the Ulrich model was when I first sort of got into HR recruitment specifically was, it was about taking people who had a particular skill set, perhaps with a target audience, and that was the best place for them. But you're right, as you say, this constant evolution is got to stretch people, develop people, broaden their thinking, open minds effectively, and change best practice.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't say that I'm right. What I would say is I serve to the profession and to the world of work, the ever-changing world of work, as somewhat of as an agitator. But in agitating respectfully and healthfully, what I also like to posit are solutions that I think could help pave the way for something a little bit more different. So some of the other things that we're going to be discussing today, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I know that in the new year, I am going to be looking at my own organization, which is a company called Collinson. Brilliant company, ever progressive as an organization, even outside of the people and culture elements that I'm responsible for. But we are going to be having a look at how we take the first step as an organization to evolve the operating model of people and culture, HR, and start to put some things into experimental phase, really. So very, very excited. I think probably more excited, not just about the value that we're going to drive our organization, but as much around what this can do to the careers of the people that are sit within my structure, within people and culture. But I think to structure, Simon, there's also an interesting piece around, does it have to just be HR people? Right. So when I think about our focus around the employee experience, and again, I've talked a lot about this recently, why on earth would I not go out to our product teams and say, can we, or our marketing teams who are experts at designing experience, and get them more integrated into our team? Why would I not go to our product or tech teams and ask for secondments of AI specialisms or automation that sit within my team for periods of time, so my team can grow, they can learn more about our world, and we can progress again even further. So I guess more of an orientation to multidisciplinary teams, not just within an HR capacity.
That's really interesting. I've seen a little of that in some of, I guess, the back office piece around people operations. We're starting to see people from customer services solutions, come in and operate in that space with really, great results, because it makes obvious sense. At the end of the day, it's service levels, it's delivery, and so why not take it that next step? I think we'd all be really interested to hear, and see how you take Collinson Group on that journey, next year. I guess you're sort of planning that out at the moment.
Still planning it out, but the way and again, something I focus on a lot is what I won't be doing is doing it as a huge bet. What I will instead be doing is taking more of learning from the product world, is lots of experimentations, testing and learning through those experimentations, and then making a big leap. As far as my organization's concerned, Collinson, they won't feel initially any huge impact in terms of the difference. Perhaps some if we start to second people into and out of our teams. But by and large, they won't. What I'm hoping is that the experimentation itself will start to create FOMO or, real points of notice that can be noted as starting to drive an impact and create slightly different results or value.
Interesting. So
it's going to be exciting.
It is definitely. I look forward to seeing and hearing more. But
yeah.
So from a learner-led perspective, from a people and an HR perspective, it leads me nicely on to the next question, really, is how do we start to organise ourselves? Because if the people and culture model and products are changing and evolving, we obviously need to grow the right capability to deliver something new. How do we go about that as a profession?
Great. I'm an organization development practitioner by trade. That's where I spent most of my career. And so what I talk a lot about is systems thinking. So that is, very, very broadly considering your organization as a system and all elements, whether you're talking about leadership and culture or performance or, right full spectrum. I think that there's and I'm just working on this at the moment. I think there's a really nice convergence of systems and design thinking in terms of how we start to organize ourselves and drive value. And I think this is all very much interconnected as part of this conversation today. The convergence of systems and design thinking, I think, is going to itself provide a little bit more of a pathway for people such as myself to be able to kind of take the leap down this road. So I think what's going to be really important here, taking the philosophy from those two types of thinking, is instead of designing ourselves first and then running into the business and saying how are we going to fix it, is a bit, that would be, I guess, in a product world similar to designing products and then going out and seeing if people want to buy them. Yeah. And this is partly where we're going wrong. If I'm redesigning a structure of an organization, my first thing that I do is look at what are the capabilities that are required in the organization. What are we trying to achieve from a strategic perspective? And therefore, what are the capabilities that are needed? And I do that before I even start to design the structures of the organization. So I think for HR, it's going to be really powerful and valuable if we start to think about the capabilities with a focus purely, first of all, on strategy. What are the capabilities that we need in order to be able to drive that? Forget traditional HR thinking, because it might not be, the answer might not be that in full. It might be very or somewhat different, which is what I would imagine. Once we've got that, then we start to design our teams and the structures that we need. But I do think, Simon, that the way we're getting it wrong at the moment is it's kind of like a, HR, we've got all these skills and services that we put on the inside of our coat pocket, and we open our coat pocket and say, right, okay, we've got, these are the tools, somewhat limited, that we're trying to use to fix the organizational health and drive the performance of our business. And we kind of hope that those are the right tools for the job, and they may not well be. So HR teams of the future, I would hope, don't just include HR people.
Yeah, this is interesting. That's coming back,
and one of the big challenges that I pose for my team now on a monthly basis is AI and automation. So someone in my team every month has to go away, and I rotate it and come back the next month with what is a piece or pieces of AI that are transforming the world of work or could transform the work that we're driving in our team. So if I'm now just about to start playing around with this, if we have a job opening in our organization, historically, we either look internally, we might rejig the role a little bit to give some of the really good stuff to existing people to make their jobs more exciting, and then we'll go out to market. Well, I was speaking to our global operations team this morning about a concept of what if, instead of doing that, we also said, what elements of that role are rule-based repetitive activity that AI potentially could take over? So we could get rid of the rule-based repetitive work, more boring elements of the work, laborious. And could we, from an operations team perspective, set up a little board that people like my business partners could go and say, we've got these 3 jobs, 20% of these jobs are rule-based and repetitive. Is there any way that automation and AI could help? So what we're doing is leaning into quite actively an approach that could create more exciting, rewarding jobs, start to filter out some of the the crap or the more boring work that may exist at the moment. And what we hopefully would start to do then is to drive more value through human beings. Does that make much sense to you, Simon?
It does. It's an interesting. It raises a lot of questions, doesn't it? HR people. I did a poll a little while back, and for many, I think it's an area of discomfort. The whole AI and how it affects our, for many, not just in HR, in fairness. How does it affect a role? Is it going to do away with us, etc.? Are the robots taking over? Equally, it's the second time you've mentioned bringing non-HR people, not necessarily into the profession, but into the delivery of people solutions, let's say.
Yes.
Which again, I suppose is fascinating. It's probably slightly unnerving for HR professionals. They probably think, so and as you say, it goes back to what skills do I need to develop? Are they non-HR skills then? Or non-traditionally HR skills?
Yeah, and I do appreciate that some of your listeners here, as we're talking today, Simon, maybe one or two people stood alone in an organisation, turning up every day to do their absolute best. And that what we're talking about may seem somewhat ethereal and very detached from where they are. If you are listening and you are that person today, just remember that you're at the moment on a step in your career, and you are likely to go to other organisations of different sizes, sectors and shapes. So it's worth sitting up and listening and thinking about where this is going into the future. AI is here already, as we know. It's irrefutable. It's already here. It's interesting that everyone thinks about AI or particularly generative AI, just about Chat GPT, but it's going to be so much more than that. It is so much more than that. And you've got a choice. You embrace it or become a laggard. And unfortunately, where people, if you're a laggard, you're going to be sitting waiting for the next 2 or 3, 5 years to come, when finally the answers arrive on your table and you can work with it. Well, personally, I'd rather, for me and for my team, to create a more exciting world of work where we feel we're pushing the boundaries. We're not waiting for things to happen. We're part of the movement.
100%. That makes perfect sense, and really exciting for them as individuals. But big moments of change, as you say. It feels like it's a real pivot point for their skills, their career development, what they look at next. And I guess you will, maybe across particularly larger organisations, we will see a lot more internal mobility in and out of the people profession.
I agree, and I think organizations themselves can help with HR's input here. We've got to stop talking about transformation. It's killing your organizations. It kills mine at times. Companies are continuing to evolve. Human beings continue to evolve. AI everything's evolving all the time. And but when we talk of transformation, we send shivers down people's backs. We make them feel that they need to fear in some way their jobs, their security. In some respects, the very basis of what Maslow had talked about in terms of those bottom two critical layers of personal security, psychological safety. Like transformation just shakes that ground up like an earthquake. When actually continuous improvement, growth mindset is the goal, right? For every organization. So that should be on an ongoing basis. Try to avoid transformation where you can.
That's great. There's so many people here. I can imagine will be listening and just, just lots to think about. So, strategic people planning then. So this is a big area. You've touched on it a little already. Translating the capabilities within strategic people planning. Talk to me a little bit more about this. What's your thinking?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Simon. I didn't come up the traditional route of to become Chief People Officer, the traditional route of education and training. I've done my master's in global HR. So I've had my education and training, but not through. I only did it, if I'm honest, when people stopped telling me I needed to. I'm a little bit stubborn like that.
You rebelled.
You may not be surprised to hear. So I think, for strategic people planning, I haven't seen much out there around what good looks like. So I've spent quite a lot of time putting together my own kind of framework for this, really. One of the problems and challenges that I had, I've got an incredible people and culture team globally, probably around 50 or 60 people spread right around the world. And each of them are brilliant in their own right. but very often they're what I would describe as a cow's eye, not a bullseye. So they are absolutely brilliant, but they're not brilliant at that or that or that. They're brilliant because, generally speaking, they tend to focus on where their experiences have led them in the past, their own passions and areas of expertise, which might be around talent development, for example. So where I see a business partner that's really passionate about talent development or has worked in organizations where that's a focus, they tend to focus more there rather than remuneration.
Yeah.
And so what we end up with quite quickly is because you can't be all things to all people, you end up with quite an imbalance in terms of the focus and impact that business partners actually have on our organization. So what I was keen to do is to prevent the conversations that I've seen in the past, where one leader is talking about the great stuff that they're getting from their business partner, and another saying, well, we never do any of that really cool stuff, and instead give the business partners a better opportunity to really succeed, raise their credibility, and make a huge impact on the business. And so we put a framework together that looks at, actually, it's probably more like an OD piece, an organization development piece, than just what you call a strategic people plan. So they would have a look at things like structures. Are the structures in our organization optimized? So you'd look at spans of control. You'd look at whether or not where are the tensions, unhealthy tensions that exist within those structures? Are they lean enough? Do we have too many managers or leaders? Too many one-to-one reporting? Where in that case, which we found in some of our business areas, where we then discovered that the manager population was disproportionate for the size of the business. So that concludes then that we've got probably quite an expensive way of running an organization. So simple things like that. So org design and structures. We have focus around leadership. So, what's the strength and weaknesses of our leadership internally, externally? What's the development that we're going to actively put in place for our leadership? We look at our talent acquisition kind of activity. So what kind of talent are we recruiting for? And the capabilities that are another element that we're recruiting for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. I think when we did that, for example, in one of our business areas for tech, we discovered that we're currently recruiting for people who coded in a particular language that they no longer teach at school. So we were like, well, if we were really, which we are, a future focused organization, entrepreneurial in spirit and driving, change within our industry, not just our company, then we need to be really thinking about that. So, but most people, when they're hiring, don't think about the capabilities that we need linked to strategy that are 2-3 years ahead. Right. So, and I talked about AI, but almost every team should have someone who specializes in their team that focuses around that space, because we need the language to understand how we can continue to evolve at pace.
That's really interesting. I wonder, is there, again, does traditional HR, have a propensity to live in the moment, to solve the problems, be operational? But from a strategic perspective, are we looking enough into the future?
I think that's a great question. And again, for anyone listening, I'm not an HR hater, I'm an HR lover. So, and I will only ever be that way, because I think we're afforded such a brilliant opportunity in our profession to help drive the bottom line, because that's what we do, and to create meaningful experiences. We impact people's lives, their families, everything. So I think we're in a really, really good position. But we have a lot to do. There's a lot that we have to change here if we're going to get it right. Personally, I want us all to lean into this.
No, I agree. As you say, it's comfort zones and stepping out of them. Even what you described when talking about strategic people planning, it sounds very much like, the example you gave of a business partner who's got a strength. Everyone has a comfort zone that they, as you say, they like to occupy. And every organization has that, and they probably aren't ever getting that strength outside that one client group across the organization.
Exactly. And you know what? It's I think adopting more of an OD mindset for the HR profession is going to be hugely powerful, Simon. Honestly, It's going to raise the level of impact, credibility, trust, but it is also going to help to feed through. I was going to say force, but to feed through. Let's use a softer language narrative. The OD practice into the organization. So most companies look at when they're thinking about how to execute on strategy. Think of what McKinsey would describe as the hard S's. So the structure, the strategy, the systems, and the people element almost kind of gets forgotten about if it wasn't for the bastions of HR who are saying, don't forget about the people. Well, again, talent and cash. This is the road of success of an organization. And so I think one of the beautiful things about a good strategic people plan or strategic workforce plan delivers is a real balance of focus, because every single thing that we do in an organization will have a people element to it. Even the most robust of systems implementation has a huge people and behavioral element that underpins the success or not of that work. So I think what's also important, and let's not forget this, Simon, is the importance of data. So they say data is king. I couldn't agree more. Do I believe that what gets measured gets done is the statement that we should be making? No, I don't, I have to say, because we're dealing with human beings and psychology, interpersonal dynamics. Not all of the huge value can be seen as something can be measured or completely tangible. But I do think that data is king. We should be using data and insight to drive more of our decision making than we're doing today. And that's why I think, as part of the strategic people plan, my view is that business partners should be formulating this with their business leaders. They're the guardians of it, but not the owners of it. I think that what we are doing, however, is providing a framework that enables the leadership teams to take an OD lens to their organization in the broadest sense. The updates of that, I think, should be played through on monthly meetings, definitely deeper dives as part of the kind of QBRs, quarterly business review meetings, or whatever organizations do. But dashboards and reporting have to be, the data side of that have to be integral. We can't forget the importance of that, because there's a whole audience out there that are really going to connect with our ability to be able to understand how numbers contribute to the overall performance of the organization.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say, link that then with our business results and how they might tend to fluctuate with employee NPS and customer client NPS. Then you've got a triangle there that is a force to be reckoned with. Sorry, Simon, I interrupted you.
Validates your structure, validates your direction, your mission. Not at all. It's interesting. I mean, as you say, it loops back nicely to growing the capability to deliver something new. HR people who are developing their career currently, perhaps at the advisory level, looking for that next step up. They walk away from this knowing, org capability, org design, data, being able to make data-driven decisions are great things for them to really start, grasping to enable them to grow their own careers.
Yeah, and you know what? There's nothing. I don't think the answer exists at the moment from a development perspective in terms of capabilities, because again, what CIPD will do is, and a really brilliant role that they play in providing the right education and training, enabling people to kind of get up and running, and they're doing a lot of really good work. But I think from a development perspective, there are so many challenges being faced by our leaders today, and I see leadership teams being incapable of being able to deal with the huge demands and the volume of demands that are thrown at them every day. And P&C HR teams are no less under pressure, I think, than our leadership teams. So I think there's a big opportunity for the supportive development framework for the HR professional to also take on leaps and bounds, to be reinvented, and in particular around the more progressive world of work, but avoiding, as I said, the traditional talent life cycle and the putting on the traditional glasses or lenses that we're looking at our problems. Something new. I haven't quite got my head around what that looks like yet. I'm having conversations with people. But again, if we're going to change the operating model, if we're going to bust open the talent life cycle, then we need to also reimagine how we're developing and supporting our people in the HR profession itself too.
Brilliant.
I haven't got to that one yet, Simon, but I'm certainly starting to think about it.
I look forward to hearing about it. So, final question from me, and it's an interesting one. I helped host it was a culture workshop recently, and we did a bit of testing out there in the marketplace to see what people thought we should cover. And the number of HR leaders that came back that said culture doesn't belong to HR. HR has a role in delivering, changing, championing culture, but it very much pointed at leadership. And it was a question you came up with when we were sort of discussing this, is how do we get the right weight of leadership standing by the side of HR to deliver change and difference? And that seems to be it really resonates with a lot of HR professionals at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that's a great question. Earlier on, I talked about organization design and development, and the fact that if I'm designing a structure, I first of all look at the capabilities, and then I start to look at the structures following that. But that has to happen in that order. I think in terms of culture, someone has to be accountable. Okay. So in most of your listeners, when they reflect on the discussions they have around accountabilities, it'll probably kind of really echo with them the fact that there can only ever be really one point of accountability for something to be successful. Otherwise, things fall through the gaps. Generally speaking, that's a truism. I don't think that the HR are accountable for culture as it stands at the moment, but I think we're the guardians of it. That's the way I tend to describe it. And that every single person that walks over our threshold has a role to play in contributing positively to it. Well, that's all very well and good. So even on that premise, where does accountability sit for culture? So if I was, as Chief People Officer, actually made accountable for culture, then I would probably tackle our cultural challenges and my role even in a very different way than I did today. Right. If my bonuses were around the evolution of our culture, and I was the person that was accountable for that, and I was given the teeth to be able to really make the decisions around that, I think that could be quite interesting. That's a role that I could step into. I would own our culture. I would put myself down as being accountable for that, where my rather horrible terms, but my neck was on the block for it.
Yeah.
But if I was to do that, I'd have to be given more empowerment to do the things that I feel are going to really make a big difference. And that would be, how do I start to truly hold me being accountable, our leaders and managers account for doing their part, for doing the right thing, where I start to more hardline link behaviors to reward mechanisms. Because I would do that. If I'm ultimately accountable, I would be, and that was my decision, these are the things that I would do. I would create motivating, inspiring moments and experiences for those people as I would anyone else. But I would be clearer about what I expect of them in order to grow and achieve greater things within the organization in particular. And I would probably put more reliance on individuals from the boardroom to the broom cupboard in terms of the role that they contribute. It's an interesting question, Simon. I'd be quite up for taking accountability, but it would lead to a different way in which I lead and drive value through our organization.
So is there a different way of doing it in that? Is that what managers, non-HR managers, business managers are doing? They're not doing now, if you like, is they haven't got reward tools to reinforce the cultural behaviours that the business is trying to get people to adhere to.
So I don't think they've got the reward tools or mechanisms, but they also don't have the right leaders. Leaders are so busy today leading our organizations and the commercial results of our organizations that there's not enough time to do the human stuff. I see it all the time. And the human things are the elements, those small or critical interactions that have the ability to be able to unleash enormous potential. And leaders aren't getting to that as we stand. That, you know, people are still leaving organizations because of their managers. That's still one of the biggest reasons. And even when they leave because it's around a lack of career or a lack of growth and development, that still comes back to the managers. We all own our own careers. We're all the CEO of our own careers, yes. But managers and leaders can really nurture the right kind of environment for growth to flourish and to help people achieve their full potential. I know that because I've been lucky enough to work for a couple of those people. And I know that because when I have really focused on my people in that way, I've seen the results that drives. I can't say I'll do it all the time, largely, Simon, because I'm too busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like every other leader.
Talking to people like me.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that bit I value.
Hey, Bertie Tonks from Collinson Group, thank you so much for your insights and your time today. It's been so great to talk to you and cover these 4 areas. And best of luck with your vision and your plan for the Collinson People Strategy in 2024.
Amazing, Simon. Of course, the other thing that I would do is buy everyone skateboards, because I think that will it's food for the soul, and I'm bound to say that, right? But thank you so much for having me on the show today, Simon. It's been great to have a chat, and hey, perhaps we could have another one about some of this, the thinking around development in the future and how we really support the progressive growth of the HR profession.
That would be amazing. Thanks so much for the offer. I'll speak to you soon.
Cool. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks for listening or watching Bertie Tonks from Collinson today, and thanks to Bertie for giving up his valuable time. All Talk HR UK episodes are available on the Alexander Lloyd YouTube channel or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. Please do like and subscribe. There's lots there for you to get your eyes and ears into. As always, I'm Simon Geere, the HR recruitment specialist across London, Surrey, Sussex and Kent. From Alexander Lloyd, I hope to see you next time. Many thanks.